It was a vision of hell. Dismally foggy day over stinking heaps of refuse. A city landfill, the current euphemism for an old-fashioned dump. Caterpillar trucks and front-loaders crouched with metal jaws gaping like gigantic prehistoric insects on the mountains of trash. An appalling chaos of rotting vegetables, discarded appliances, filthy clothing, rusted cans, mildewed paper. The terribly random refuse of a consumer society gone mad. A lone office chair sat on the top of one hill, empty and waiting, its black lines stark against the fog. And below it, tangled in the trash like a broken doll, was the body of a teenaged girl. Stiffened, naked, bloody stumps at her neck and wrist where her head and hand used to be. Homicide detectives Adam Garrett and Carl Landauer stood on the trash hill. Garrett, with his black Irish eyes and hair and temper, hard-muscled, impatient, edgy. And chain-smoking, whiskey-drinking, donut-eating Landauer, a living, breathing amalgam of every cop cliché known to man. Middle-aged spread, broad, sweating face, and bawdy, cynical humor. A lifer who used the caricature as a disguise. The partners were silent, each taking in the totality of the scene. The landfill was a succession of hills and pits and carefully leveled ground. Rutted roads wound up the hills to the fresh dumping mound on which they now stood. A strong, cold wind whipped at their coats and hair, swirling plastic carrier bags across the trash hills like ghost tumbleweeds and mercifully diffusing the stench. On a hot day, the smell would have been beyond bearing. On one side of the summit, a forest stretched below, startlingly green and pure against the chaos of human waste. On the other side, the city of Boston was a hazy outline, like a translucent Oz in the bluish fog. Far below, at ground level, were smaller hills of gravel, sand, broken chunks of concrete, logs and stumps, wood chips, various earthy colors of mulch, a black pile of tires. A corrugated tin roof sheltered an open-walled recycling center. A row of BPD cruisers lined the dirt drive up to the landfill's main office trailer. The temporary command post had been set up beside the trailer, and 24 mostly African-American and Latino workers huddled beside it, waiting to give statements to a couple of uniforms, while other patrolmen walked the periphery of the fence. A long line of city sanitation trucks was stalled at the front gate, being diverted by traffic control. The first responders had done their best to establish a perimeter, considering the crime scene was a joke. How do you begin to process a mountain of refuse 100 yards high? Landauer looked over the reeking heaps of garbage, shook his head gloomily. Shit, he spat the word. I don't know if he's the smartest perp I've ever seen, or the dumbest. Garrett nodded, keeping his breathing even, trying not to suck in too deep a lungful of the sulphurous stink. Smartest, because any trace evidence would be completely lost in the junk heap. Dumbest, because the unsub must have driven straight in past the office trailer and paid the attendant for the privilege of dumping his terrible cargo. Garrett lit a mental candle, half thought something like a prayer. Please let there be a record. The partners turned away from the dismal panorama and climbed over trash to where medical examiner George Edwards, a stocky Irish banty rooster of a man, stood looking down at the body. Seagulls circled sullenly high above, their breakfast taken from them. 2 crime scene techs were extracting and bagging one piece of garbage at a time from around the corpse, meticulously preserving as much evidence as possible, in the hope that the refuse in which she lay might yield some personal connection to the killer. A videographer documented the original placement of each piece. All 3 technicians stood and moved back in solemn simultaneity so Garrett and Landauer could approach.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.